Fofi, we call on you to rescind your decision and grant Yona, Maya, and Paula their rights to Namibian citizenship by descent to come home and the family to be reunited.
Welcome to yet another edition of the Context Podcast. My name is Enoke Kaumba. This is where we review stories that were reported by the Namibian newspaper during the course of the week. Straight from Independence celebration, the fourth week of March started off with a story that dominated the headlines. Not only dominating, but it also got people talking. It is the story of Phillip Lühl's battle to bring his babies home after the Home Affairs Ministry left him and his partner's twin daughters stateless and homeless. The architect, who is also a university lecturer, filed an urgent application in the Windhoek High Court, asking the court to order the Ministry of Home Affairs and Immigration, as well as the Ministry of Safety and Security, to issue emergency travel certificate to his daughters or to allow him to enter Namibia with the two babies. Now, the twins were born in Durban, South Africa through a surrogate pregnancy on 13 March 2021. Now, in his affidavit, he says he and his Mexican-born husband, Guillermo Delgado, are registered as the parents of the twins on their South African birth certificate. The Namibian Home Affairs Ministry is not only refusing to recognize Lühl's and Delgado's marriage, which they got in South Africa, but it's also not willing to issue the travel documents which Lühl needs to return to his and Delgado's home, which is in Windhoek, a stance which Lühl has slammed in his affidavit, calling it disrespectful, irresponsible, and downright malicious. Of course, at the beginning of the week, Lühl also posted a video on social media, which also went viral, a video where he's asking for support.
We should remember that for many members of the LGBTQ community, the words freedom and equality ring still, after all these 30 years, still ring quite hollow. And we have a Minister of Home Affairs who is essentially closing the door of the Namibian house to two baby girls that are, not even a week old today. And in the coming days, we will need your support to end this discrimination and to essentially allow Paula and Maya to come back home.
Of course, it will be interesting to see what the judgment will be in this case. Of course, the judge, Thomas Masuku, is expected to deliver his judgment on this case on the 19th of April. He did, however, say that he will notify the lawyers involved in the case if he is to make a judgment earlier than the set date. Now, moving on to Wednesday's edition. Wednesday also had a dominating story. A story that is normally associated with the back page made it to the front page. Government forced NFA, the Namibian Football Association, to pay ex-officials 3 million Namibian dollars. The payments were made in September 2020 and January 2021. An NFA document titled 2019 AFCON qualification matches shows that the financially stricken Football Association had to fork out millions to settle debts owed to coaches, doctors, and kit managers, among others. Among the people who were paid are the former Brave Warriors coach Ricardo Manetti, ex-assistant coach Ronnie Canalello, and the team manager Cyril Isaacs. They received 360,000 Namibian dollars each. Other officials who got paid are the former Brave Warriors second assistant coach Colin Benjamin, who received 300,000 Namibian dollars, goalkeeper coach Herman January, as well as fitness coach Charles Botha, who both received 270,000 Namibian dollars each. The former Brave Warriors technical director Timo Chungarero received 225,000 Namibian dollars. He still has a case pending at the labor court. He is demanding 3.6 million Namibian dollars. Sports Minister Agnes Chongarero said she's aware of the AFCON payments, but did not answer detailed questions that were sent to her. Now, this story did not only get the attention of Namibians, but it went as further as being quoted by South Africa's Kickoff magazine's website. Timo Shepo reported on this story. Sakeo Sikela reported the Ministry of Finance has called the awarding of tenders to local companies to supply government-owned schools hostels with food due to irregularities. Now, the Central Procurement Board, which was responsible for awarding the contracts, was told to review the process and relocate the tenders. Now, the headline in this story was Finance Council's awarding of 3.6 billion Namibian dollars hostels food tender.
A review panel in the Finance Ministry kind of cancelled the awarding of the contract to provide government-owned schools with food. The reason for cancelling is because there were irregularities apparently with regards to the process that was followed to allocate these contracts, and some companies, 11 companies, complained, and the issue was taken to the review panel, and then the review panel concluded its process last week, and then that's when they decided to cancel the tenders. The concerns that were raised, some of them include the procurement board or the central procurement board asking the companies to have an agreement or at least a document that proves that they have committed to buy products from local producers. Yeah, if they didn't have that, then that should serve as a disqualifying criteria. So that was one of the bone of contention, and another bone of contention was the issue of companies not having access to warehouse or not having warehouses at all where they can store their products, and 87 of them were disqualified because based on some of those criteria, and then only 8 were picked. Some of them who have been already benefiting from these tenders. Yeah, so the questions now that were raised by some of the politicians in Parliament relates to why are these companies, some of them had been benefiting already, and then some of them are kind of in the same place or are from the same part of the country. Why is it that they are always the ones benefiting? Is there something that has to do with tribalism, perhaps, or is there something that has to do with favoritism, perhaps, from the procurement board? So currently, we are still waiting for the Central Procurement Board to respond to the review panel in the Finance Ministry, so that we can see whether if they are going to go ahead with their initial award, or they are going to redo the whole process.
What are the possible developments in the story?
Yeah, as I said, that we are waiting for the Procurement Board to pronounce itself on the order of the review panel. Once the Procurement Board pronounces itself, it should be earlier than end of April, so that because this is an urgent tender, it has to do with the provision of food to schools, hostels, where we are keeping our children at government schools. Yeah.
And finally, in sports, while Namibia's Brave Warriors failed to qualify for the Africa Cup of Nations next year in Cameroon, the island of Comoros made history as they qualified for their first ever Africa Cup of Nations. A draw and a win against both Togo and Kenya, as well as a draw against superpower Egypt, was enough to see the small nation make it to their first ever Africa Cup of Nations. Congratulations to Comoros. Of course, Comoros was not the only team that made history to qualify for their first ever Africa Cup of Nations. The Scorpion of Gambia also qualified for the first time in their history. And that's all I have for you today on the Context Podcast. Do join us sometime next week. The podcast that reviews stories that were reported by your favorite newspaper, the newspaper that tells it like it is. For me, Enoke. Bye-bye.